As we begin, let's first take a look at a typical bracket. Commonly used in the market today is just a standard L bracket. Let's learn the proper terms for these as we get started. So, as I stated, this is an L bracket, and the top portion and the down portion both are called flanges. So you have a top flange and you have a down flange. And you can see that the top flange of this one is solid and there's no holes, so that your surface is applied with an adhesive, where the down flange does have holes and it is tied into your structure. This particular L bracket does not have what we call a gusset or a stiffener bar that runs between the top flange and the down flange. That gives it a different carrying capacity, so that you need to keep that in mind as well as you're choosing your bracket, and we'll get into that in a few minutes on when you should choose that. These are also powder coated and finished with paint, which protects their surfaces and makes them rust resistant. Raw steel in its form for a hidden bracket is going to corrode over time. So it will need to be in a place that's hidden when it's installed, or you will need to finish it if you decide to purchase a raw steel bracket. Stainless steel, which a lot of the other brackets that we'll be looking at today are going to be made in stainless steel, is not going to corrode over time and will give you a more finished look, especially if it's visible. This particular hole treatment in this bracket is considered countersunk. So you can see that the screw head will go in deeper when it's installed, and it will give you a flush mount. And we'll continue to talk about that a little bit more as we look at this type bracket. A hidden bracket like this one can be used because 2/3 of the countertop is going to be resting on another surface, which is your cabinet base. So the first thing you want to do is determine where the supports need to be located. And once you decide that, if you don't have this stud in place, you will need to install it. Now, most of the time, because this is going to be hidden behind the fascia is not attached, and you have access into the inside of the cabinet so that you can place this wood in there where the bracket is going to be installed. Otherwise, you're going to have to go inside the cabinet and install your wood from that back side. So once you've laid out your placement, you'll want to begin your installation. Now, how do I decide my placement? If using a hidden L bracket like this, where there's no stiffener or gusset in between, you are going to want to space these no greater than 18 inches apart. So most of the time, going 16 inches on center is going to put you at the place where there's a stud. Now, how do I know which size bracket to get? Well, it's going to depend on the amount of overhang that you have. So we recommend that there is no more than 4 inches of unsupported weight on your countertop. Other industries on the market today may give you a little bit larger measurement than that, and these are just our recommendations for safety. Countertops are used for all sorts of things, especially in a home setting where children are there and parties and gatherings are going on. So we want to make sure that we're safe. We have a lot of money invested in our countertop and the rest of the kitchen, and we certainly don't want to see anything happen. So once we've decided how much countertop overhang we have, we select the size of our bracket. We know if we're using this one, we cannot place it any further than 18 inches apart, so we lay out our placement and we begin our installation. So you'll install your first bracket, and when you do, you want to make sure that your bracket is level with the top of the countertop. And you must have 1 3/4 inches of wood, which is from the 2x4, for your fasteners to attach into. Another reason we can use this type of hidden support in this island overhang application is because your base cabinets are fixed to the floor. And as I said previously, the 2/3 of the weight is based over top of those base cabinets that's affixed to the floor. So you want to check level when you install your first bracket across the top of the plane. Then you'll move on to install your next one. And once you get that one installed, you want to check level in this direction as well, so that you have level going in this plane and in this plane for your installation. Once all the brackets are installed and everything's nice and level, before you install your fascia, you're going to want to level up everything across the front, because this bracket is a 1/4 inch thick. In each location where a bracket's installed, you have a 1/4 inch rise. So in some cases you'll want to use furring or a 1/4 inch plywood and install it next to and in between each bracket, so that you have a nice flush surface for your fascia to install. Once you've put your fascia on and you've put a bead of silicone on this top flange and you've installed your countertop, nothing is visible at all unless you look underneath the countertop and you can see the bracket extending underneath the countertop. Now in this case, this bracket is painted, so that's going to protect it. Most of the time these come in raw steel, so you can either paint them if you like to match the underside of your countertop, or leave them raw, just keeping in mind that they may show some corrosion over time, which won't be visible unless someone's looking underneath the countertop. One other island application that we want to take a look at is a little bit different, and it's set up across the cabinet base. This particular bracket is a one-size-fits-all type version. It has a small down flange here on the side with slots rather than holes, so that you can adjust where you need to put your fastener if needed. Now this particular bracket, because it is one size, can be moved forward and backward on your cabinet base depending on how much overhang you are supporting. So you'll want to follow those same guidelines of no more than 4 inches of unsupported weight. So you don't want more than 4 inches off the front end. And then you'll position this based on that and how much your overhang is. Now this particular bracket's going to need some additional blocking as well. This lays across the top of the cabinets, and because it does not have the stiffener, it follows the same guidelines as the L bracket. It must be placed no more than 18 inches apart. So you're going to lay out your spacing on your island base and determine where you're going to install these brackets. Once that's decided, you're going to want to cut some 1x4 strips of wood that will go the length across the countertop, or excuse me, across the cabinet base. And that will be installed into the front and the back of the cabinet base. And the bracket will sit down next to the 1x4 and fasten in to the wood at this location, depending on how far out you move it for your overhang to support it, or backward, depending on what position you need. Now one extra thing that's going to be needed at this point also, obviously, is because it does cross the front of the cabinet base here, you will need to route out an 1.5 inches space right here for the width of this bracket to extend and remain flush with the rest of the top of the counter. Once you have these installed, again, you will put a bead of silicone on the portion that's extending out. You'll set your countertop, and this one will also be invisible unless someone's looking underneath the countertop. The next type of overhang that we want to take a look at is a knee wall or a pony wall. Uses both terms, so whichever one you're familiar with, it creates the same type of setting. So for this particular hidden application, we're going to look at using a flat plate. These can be used only on a pony wall or a knee wall. If you don't have one of those, a false pony wall or knee wall can be built in front of a cabinet base if this is the desired application. So when using a flat plate, again, How do I know what size I need to select or specify for my project? This flat plate, because it does not have a gusset, is going to follow the same guidelines that our L bracket that we looked at earlier follows. So it cannot be spaced any further apart than 18 inches. It will also follow the same guidelines as far as size goes. No, you don't want to specify a bracket that is going to be less than 4 inches shorter than your countertop. So if you have a 20-inch overhang, a 16-inch bracket would need to be specified. Now, something important to remember about these flat plates, if you specify a 16-inch flat plate, when it arrives to the job site, it will actually be 20.125 inches long, because there's an additional 4.125 inches here that is used for mounting purposes, and the 16 inches is actually what is going to extend underneath the countertop to support the 20-inch overhang. So when using these plates, you want to begin by determining the placement on the knee wall. So based on the spacing of no more than 18 inches apart, you will lay out for the length of your countertop. You will want to set each plate in place on the knee wall and draw a line on either side of the plate, and then lay the plate aside. Now notice a special thing that we have here on the knee wall. You will always need to have a double plate, is what it's called in the industry, or two 2x4s stacked on top of one another. And that's because we are going to make a channel where we just marked with our pencil on the top 2x4. You're going to route out a 1/4 inch deep channel for that plate to be installed. Anytime you're cut into your 2x4, it weakens it somewhat, so you want to make sure you have the second 2x4 in place to continue to give you the strength to carry the load of the countertop that you have. So you will, as I said, place these in place, make your mark on each side, all the way down the length of your counter or your pony wall, make your channels, and then begin your installation. These plates come with countersunk hole treatments so that you'll have a nice flush mount when you're complete. The channel allows that to sit down in there, and then the screw is countersunk so that it will also be flush across the top when you're ready to set your countertop. Again, you want to make sure checking for level when you install in both directions so that everything is nice and level. Once you have these fastened in, you'll put your bead of silicone on the top and set your countertop. And again, this gives you a completely invisible support choice, only visible if you look underneath the countertop.